Welcome to Two Bridges and One Bypass. I'm your host, Jimmy Woodson. So, I got my amigo from way back in the day, since day one, Jeff James here. And I thought, when I thought about doing a podcast, I thought, well, I know who my first guest is going to be, because there is no more interesting person here on the Outer Banks than this guy right here. Oh, man. So say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Jeff James here.
Yeah. So Jeff and I grew up together, and he preceded me with his move here to the Outer Banks. So we're going to get into a lot of that. But a couple things that I think I'm going to start ask folks when they come aboard, just to kind of lube everybody up and get you into that. And you can pass. I've got a bunch of weird questions. You can pass on any of these. But the question number one is, do you have a regular morning routine? And I know that could change with the time of year. But is there a regular morning routine, let's say, when it's not hunting season?
I think the only regular thing probably is wake up, get dressed, make the coffee, get in the truck, and go wherever I'm going.
Right.
That kind of starts the whole thought process.
No meditation, no putting like green drinks in the blender and Yeah. Okay.
I wish I could say I did.
Okay. Now, this is my favorite question. This is a question, and I actually was thinking about this driving to work this morning. This is something you should probably give somebody ahead of time, but what's your favorite movie? That's a tough one. Should we pick a genre? Should you say drama?
I'll tell you what, I'll give you a couple different genres.
Okay.
Like an individual.
Yeah, right. And I don't think you can think you can
it's hard to beat Fast Times at Ridgemont High. You know what I mean?
Classic comedy.
With that one and Dazed and Confused, it just reminds me of where we grew up, when we grew up, somewhat. Yeah. And then Open Range is another good one. Mm-hmm. Anything with Robert Duvall. Yeah. And Tombstone, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then Roadhouse, just for the quotes,
So hold on, which one?
Hard to be Roadhouse.
Tombstone is the one that has...
It's Val Kilmer, it's Doc Holliday, and...
is that Costner? Or
no, there's a bunch of different ones that depict that showdown.
Kurt Russell.
It's Kurt Russell and Chet from Weird Science.
Yeah, he's one of the brothers.
One of the brothers, and then
one of the brothers.
And then Wade Garrett from Roadhouse is the other brother. What's his real name?
Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott.
Oh, which you should probably go down the list, except for a mask with Cher in any Sam Elliott movie. Yeah. Okay, that's a good one. All right. Any more that you think you just got to add to that list? It's tough when you get this question sprung on you.
True. Yeah. I mean, there's been so many.
Yeah.
I watch a lot of old cowboy movies at night in bed sometimes. Yeah. So some that have a lot of actors that you would never have known that came before our time, obviously. But a lot of those old movies kind of speak to me. I like those.
Yeah, and for people younger than 40, 45. I mean, to have missed the 1980s and the movies that came out that you could see in the theater. I mean, you just can't make them anymore. I mean, it's just the way it is.
I try to push them on my girls, at least the ones that are halfway fit to watch.
If you're properly educated. So this is a good one. So if you ran aground in the middle of the Pacific and you stuck there for the rest of your life, what genre of music would you pick? Would you go bluegrass, rap, classical?
Man, I don't know. I've been listening to a lot of Tyler Childers here lately.
Gotcha.
That I guess you would call that. What genre would that be? It's.
Yeah, but does that fall into like Americana?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
He's just a good storyteller, good songwriter, good voice. Ryan Bingham. Wrinkle Neck Mules. You heard of that? Yeah. They're from Richmond.
Really?
Yeah. It's all, I guess you'd call it country. But I mean, I like everything, really. A little bit of everything would be great.
It's funny you mentioned Richmond, and that boy, He's got that song "Do Be in My Pocket." He's from Fredericksburg, and I didn't know
Don't
that.
know that one.
And I'd heard. We'll have to put a clip of that in. I'll cut it in. Probably get pulled from YouTube and sued. But okay, so we did that one. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Oh, superpower. Huh. Wow.
All right,
That's
pass.
a good question. I don't know.
Pass.
I'll be thinking about it.
Think about that
I'll
one.
hit you later with the answer.
You know, Linnea brought this up. My wife. He knows who my wife is, but you may not. She's like, "What's your favorite? Either your favorite vacation destination where you've been, or a place that you always wanted to go, but time or money or whatever stood in the way. What do you can go favorite, or you can go,
I've become kind of a homebody here lately.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we've been fortunate enough to go some, normal places with my wife, Jen. You guys don't know her, but he does too. With her work, we go some pretty cool places, Jamaica and different places in Mexico and through the Bahamas and stuff. And I spent a lot of time in Mexico and the Bahamas as well, fishing over the years. A place called Puerto Aventuras is probably the coolest place I've ever been, and that was largely in part due to the people that were there. It was a lot of boats from a lot of places. We made a lot of friends from Florida and Texas, and there was some Virginia Beach guys there, and South Carolina guys there, and Louisiana, and everybody just kind of fell in there at once. And it was fishing was only half the fun, really. It was a eternal dock party basically once the sun set, and some days when it blew, the sun didn't have to set for it to start. But it was just a good time. Everybody's the right age,
Right.
Good time. So,
and I think we'll probably be getting back into that in a little while. Let's see if I got one more of these that make. Well, I'm not going to ask you.
Invisibility would be the power too, by the way.
Yeah, that would. Yeah,
I was just sitting there thinking for hunting purposes that would help
be
a lot.
good.
That would help a lot.
Other than that, you could get embarrassed in public. People didn't know you're there. But how about that old Jeff?
Yeah,
I don't know
that's
what to
right.
think about him.
Just have to walk the other way.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good. I guess here's one that I probably should ask everybody. What's your favorite thing about living here?
Well, I think that my favorite thing about living here is probably something that a lot of people wouldn't think about, and I think you and I may have talked about this before, but it's the fact that we're, if you want to say, buffered from the real world, so to speak. All this stuff that you see and read on social media and see on TV, and stuff that you find yourself reading on Facebook or something, and just, if you sit back and think, it's affecting some people, but it really ain't affecting us. I mean, that's the truth of the matter, kind of. There's everything is everywhere too, but I think we're fortunate to be on the end of this tip of land, or on an island inside of a strip of land that is not easily traveled. I mean, you don't come here unless you mean to be here, basically, and not many people just pass through. It's not on the way to anywhere.
That's true.
So. I think that's a cool thing about it too. I mean, obviously it's beautiful, and it offers a lot of neat outdoor activities and some business opportunities. I mean, you have to you got to hustle or either specialize. You know what I mean, around here. So, but yeah, it's
There's
it's
not
a
a lot
nice
of
place
not a lot of in between on that.
It's
You're right.
not,
You either
no.
got to
There's a lot of nice folks around here too. It's in that regard, it's a lot like home where we grew up. So yeah.
So, I talked to you earlier. You can, we get into a lot of stuff, and you can expand or contract on anything that you want to talk about. But let's talk about. I like one of the favorite things I like to hear when I listen to people I don't know that well, pretty much every person that I meet, I always ask them, where they're from.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about where you're from, which of course is where I'm from.
Yeah. So we grew up in Gloucester, Virginia, which is about 2.5, well, say 3 hours from here if you drive like you got good sense, north of here. And this was always the vacation destination of pretty much everybody up there. I mean, your parents worked, you went to school. When school was out, you worked or you played, depending on what age you were. And at some point during the summer, you went to Nags Head.
Right.
So that was about how it worked.
Right.
But Gloucester County is still home to me, truly, in my heart. And still have a lot of good friends, a lot of family and family friends up there. I don't get up here as much as I'd like to. It's just beautiful country. It is indeed God's country, I think. I mean, there's a lot of places I've been that remind me of it. And but where you grew up is in my heart always home. This is my home now, but that'll always be home. But yeah, good old Gloucester. There's a lot of characters come from there, and a lot of good times we had around there. So.
Well, I don't think you can truly appreciate, like sometimes, I'll go a month and maybe people that I meet on the business side, like they're not from here.
Yeah.
And, but you can't truly appreciate, what home means to people. If you grew up in a place your whole life, and then you understand and you respect the people that are native and, how they feel maybe things need to be done. And because we're just a come here.
And will always be.
As my granddaddy Leroy used to say, they've come here. They always want. I guess next Sunday they'll be playing a tambourine at church. But yeah,
boy.
So that's how it goes. Yeah. So you lived there. I mean, K through 12, sports.
K through 12, played mainly baseball and football. Coming along, just. Delved into basketball. I mean, played a lot of basketball for fun. I love playing basketball. Of course, everybody did. We played at the church, where you went to church. Presbyterian Church in Gloucester had the best outdoor court in the county, I think, and it was lit up so we could go play there at night. And I think it kept us from getting in a lot of trouble sometimes. People would gather up there and have a good basketball game. But I only played that 1 year in 8th grade with a coach, Rusty Ingram. And,
Right.
Anyway, it was. It coincided with hunting season too, largely, and it was easy to drop one. I wouldn't have been one of the better basketball players anyway, so it was fortuitous in that manner anyway. Just the fact that it came that time of year.
Did you set the Gloucester Intermediate School record for the fastest foul out?
I believe I did. It was 8th grade. I was going to mention that, but I didn't want.
Did you make it to halftime?
No. Well. I don't think I got in the game till after halftime. And I remember, I think you guys were in the stands, right?
Perhaps.
You and Mike Barefoot and maybe Eddie. I can't remember who was playing or what. But, I think I fouled out maybe in 37 seconds or something like that.
Right.
It's pretty.
It's like one every 5 seconds.
I was out there to make you guys laugh, basically. I think we were playing Queens Lake, and we weren't going to do anything with them anyway, with Buster Lee and that gang. Bunch of tall dudes that could ball,
all along the sports. So then, So then after high school.
After high school, went to Randolph-Macon College, and I played baseball there. And
Ashland, Virginia.
Very good school, where we started out together.
We did start out together, first year roommates.
Yeah, first year roommates, Moreland 124. Yes. And if that hall could talk.
A podcast into itself.
Yeah, I would say so. But yeah, man, that place was great. I made a lot of good friends and played a lot of good ball, and got to go some cool places, play against some good ball players, and it all culminated in my senior year, breaking my hand the night before, which was a very stupid thing I did anyway. It never, when you're going to punch a wall, choose the right spot where there are no studs.
No studs.
Yeah. Somebody put a moose head poster on the wall, and I chose to punch the moose right in the face. Just so happened to be 3 studs together there. So
nice.
That's another story, too.
Right.
But anyway, that was the night before my senior year, which I was supposed to be kind of like spearheading the team. And
the season, it was at the beginning of the season.
The beginning. So I missed the first couple games. But, yeah, I played in the outfield the whole time there. Played freshman year, played right field. Mm-hmm. And then sophomore year, played right and left. And then there was always a real good center fielder there, like Troy Yancey, who you knew.
Was he a senior our first year or junior?
I want to say he was a junior, but I might be wrong.
Well, either way, I guess my question was, who came after him?
Scott Rash.
Scott.
And Scott Rash is a ball player.
Right. Yeah.
100%.
Right.
Great. One of the best hitters I ever.
Who played right when you went over to left?
Well, Charlie Kuhn played in left a lot. If Charlie would pitch, I think depending on the batting lineup, he would move me wherever.
Right.
Sometimes when we played at home, we didn't have a fence, so that stretch between right and left was called Hell's Half Acre.
Right.
And you could literally hit one 500 feet, and the only thing that might stop it was a ivy wall that went down the road there.
Yeah.
And that was probably 700 feet. So
right. That was the back of the end zone of the football field. There was a fence, but Hank Aaron couldn't hit one out of there, and you had all day if it got by you. Yeah,
you had to keep it in front of you.
Which is
gappers were dangerous for
which
sure.
Is terrifying with Kuhn and left. Thinking about one going in gap. I hope he hears this. Did you guys ever win the championship after that first year, 86, the spring 87 season? I know you are always in contention, but that was awesome.
That was a great team.
Walk into a team that was awesome. Had just great ball players.
Yeah, great coaching.
Awesome, great coaching.
Some good guys. Landis behind the plate, you know, and his brother Tim had pitched before. Just right on down the lineup. I could name them all right now. Really, it was a good bunch of guys.
And you're right about the coaching. I mean, I had sort of a abbreviated baseball career at Macon, but the coaching, Coach Waters, but then
Hugh Stevens.
Made it awesome. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about him.
Oh man, he's a legend. I mean, I couldn't tell you. I can't think off the top of my head the actual history of him being there.
Just about,
but what he would
say, his gravitas.
Yeah. I mean, he was. Hugh Stevens, I think I've been told since, and I've been back to Macon just a handful of times for these friends. I'm still part of this Friends for Baseball group, Friends of Baseball, whatever. Mm-hmm. And one year they memorialized that team that we had with home plate, I believe it was, on one of their dugout days, which they have an unbelievable facility there now. I mean, it's not at all like when we played. Right. And someone told me at that there had been 3 coaches. I think when they were introducing the coach now, Ray Hedrick, who is a very good coach too. I don't know him that well. I've spoken to him a few times, but he's a winner and seems like a very good teacher and seems like a player's coach too. But I think they said there had been 3 coaches in the history of the college. And it started in 1830, so I know Hugh wasn't that old. But anyway, it had been Coach Stevens, Coach Waters, and then Coach Hedrick. And that's a cool, that's something cool to come from, in my opinion, too, just because, but getting back to Hugh Stevens, he was still there in somewhat of a coaching application. And so Coach Waters was the head coach, and his gravitas you speak of, he would just kind of roam around and interject whatever he felt like he needed to interject. And it was normally something, in a 50s or 60s, 40s, 50s or 60s kind of a mantra he would try to lay on you, depending on what you were doing. But the one thing I remember about him more than anything was when we'd have a baseball game, when it was game day, and we'd be warming up or getting ready or, taking some BP or whatever. He would just be walking around mumbling, ball game, ball game, ball game. And that's all he would say, ball game. I'll never forget it, man. It was an honor to share the field with him in some respect,
How old do you figure he was in 86, 87? 60s?
Yeah.
Late 60s? Probably no older than that.
I talk that about some people nowadays, too. Now that we're in our 50s, it's, a wonder. But, yeah, at least in the 60s, I would say. Yeah. And not to leave him out, Billy Wood was another good coach. The best batting practice coach that's ever walked the face of the earth, in my opinion. I know there's got to be a lot of good ones, but he could throw strike after strike after strike.
He threw no balls.
He threw no balls. And I got to speak to him last time I was up there, too. They honored his class, which he and Lester G., Coach Waters, were in the same class.
Gotcha. Okay.
I didn't realize that either. But great team of coaches.
And they played for
Hugh Stevens.
For Hugh Stevens.
Yeah.
Just to make sure everybody picks up on that.
So that was a cool You know, a cool place to play ball, cool place to go to school. It was right for me because it was a smaller school. I don't think I was cut out for a big school, so it you know, it's kind of like being at home. It wasn't that far away anyway, and you were free enough to roam, but you know, you were close enough to that you felt close. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to run into, you know, first time you'll get a kick out of this, but even being that close to home, the first time I rolled into campus there, I remember seeing some boys throwing lacrosse out in the field. I had never seen lacrosse. Had you? I had no idea what it was.
Just Sam Finney.
See, I never even knew that.
So I saw Sam Finney in the yard at his house when I went down and cut the grass for him one time.
Stuff
yeah, and then, you know, and
I thought these guys had crab nets out in the middle of the field. They were the lacrosse field was right, and I ended up being friends with a handful of those lacrosse players.
Well, you mean like a dip net?
Because like a long handle crab net, like you'd get a bucket rider off the piling with. But no, I swear, it's a big part of me like to try to play that. I think I would like to try it, but it coincided with baseball season, so we'd watch them practice. Right. They watch us practice.
And at 18, so far behind the curve because Macon had a huge like all up 95 all the way to in New York and New Jersey.
It was comprised of Maryland, New Jersey, and New York. Probably some Pennsylvania guys too, but
big lacrosse
country. I would say most of the ones I knew that I got to be friends with were from Maryland. Maryland's got a huge lacrosse, following, and they start them from knee high,
Right, absolutely.
But to be that close to us and have never even heard of it, but I don't know.
Well,
we didn't have Facebook back then either.
Before we get into, because college leads into sort of your matriculation into, coming down here and working summers. But before we get into that, we need to talk about family a little bit.
Yep.
And this isn't just because I know you and I know your family, but I think this is important. You know a little bit about somebody, whether your granddaddy went to prison or he went to Normandy. There's something about it that tells you a little bit about the person. Tell me a little bit about your maternal grandfather.
My maternal grandfather, Marvin Hogg.
Yeah.
Marvin R. Hogg Jr. Pop is what everybody knew him as. Yeah, he was something else, man. A clear character, 100%. Not a very big guy, but, it seemed like the older I got, I knew him growing up as Pop. He was my granddaddy. He loved the ball game. He loved hunting. He loved bird hunting especially, and then duck and goose hunting as well. And he loved playing golf. And that was three things that you could. And he liked drinking a little Miller occasionally too. There's a little,
yeah.
But so anyway, he was. I guess I don't know. By the time I was old enough, he always had a place on the Eastern Shore, to goose hunt. So he and some of his friends, and I think it was. And my dad loves telling some of these stories too, because it was, they were there hunting, but it was also a guys for just the boys, getting out and doing whatever they want to do.
No,
yeah,
I didn't know that hunting was
separate
for guys for that.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Awesome.
But so I think that a few times I was privy, and Britton went over there a few times with me to maybe some things we shouldn't have been at that age, but we didn't know any different. They put us in the back room and we went to bed and they carried on, and then we went hunting. But he truly loved me. I know that, and all my friends. He knew all of y'all just as good as he knew me. As far as the baseball goes, especially, and the football. So, never. I don't believe there's ever a game until college that he was not at.
Right.
And he passed away when I was in college. But I got some great memories of him, and he was at Normandy. On D-Day.
Well, that's funny. I did not know that. I knew he was
just use that for
in the service.
Example.
Yeah, just that's
he was,
funny. Okay.
He was some sort of a radar operator on a boat
Navy
that was offshore. He was in the Navy. Yeah. He always had some tattoos like they got back then. And
right.
Anyway.
So did my maternal grandfather.
Yeah.
Navy and Merchant Marine.
Yeah.
So he was a Gloucester pointer.
He was a Gloucester pointer. Yeah. He grew up, I think. Down the road, like we said, but on that stretch between kind of like if you're going to York River Yacht Haven on the left there, and that's where my mom grew up down that stretch, and
Gloucester Banks-ish type
kind of down
area.
that way.
Yeah.
Yep.
So where's your grandmother from?
My grandmother that he married.
Yeah.
All right. she had an interesting name too. We called her Poots.
So yeah.
And I don't understand. They say I gave it to her, but I don't remember why or how. But she was originally from Baltimore, up in that area.
Okay.
And then she ended up, I guess when at some point she had family from up there, I'll say. Spent most of her life in Gloucester and lived in Gloucester Point. And I guess they met sometime after the service, maybe. She was good to hang on to a lot of old pictures, black and white little square ones.
Yeah.
And a lot of them would have the year stamped down the bottom,
Yeah.
So a lot of them had, had him clad in a baseball uniform because back then a lot of the guys, in their 20s and 30s were still playing baseball. And I can't remember the name of the team. He played on a team, and they were called something like the Bumblebees or something like that. But they would play a crowd from Matthews or Lancaster, or, you know what I mean, just regional teams and stuff. But anyway, he loved to play ball. He was a catcher, and then my dad was a catcher. So, that's what I started out. That was my passion, to catch. And I did for a long time. So until we got to high school, I guess. And, when you start having a team like that and you got several people that are good catchers or good enough catchers, and then you have a talent for somewhere else too, it was kind of liberating to get out in the outfield too, because I really liked it once I got there, because all I want to do is try to throw somebody out anyway. So
no squatting down.
Nah, none,
unless there's a pitching change or something,
which I didn't mind it. I like that. I like running the show, that part of it. But anyway,
so on to the paternal side. So your paternal grandfather,
Andrew James Sr., and called him Pop.
Double Pop. Gotcha.
Yeah, he grew up in Mob Jack, Virginia, on the end of the road, where the road runs out, the point of land between the East River and the North River. Little thin strip now. But he was one of 11 children, I want to say. It may have been more than that, but I think it was at least 11.
Whew,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
It was about 60-40 boys to girls, I think. Might have been 7 boys, 4 girls, or 6 and 5. I hope I didn't get that wrong, but I believe it's 11. And and then he grew up. He grew up there with, I remember the old home place down there. If you veered off at North and went down the end of the road there to Mob Jack, and so pretty interesting side note. I just when I was home last time, I had to get a piece of furniture for my daughter, and I found an old book that had it's a total lineage of the James family from 1653 on. And I read a couple parts of it. Our whole family is noted in it.
Well, the 1653ers living in Matthews up that way?
Yeah. Actually, Thomas James was one of the brothers, I think, out of the original herd of them that settled in Gloucester. And then the book is just names and numbers, basically. But there are some stories and some actual letters written in there. Pretty interesting, but So he lived in Matthews his whole life. And then I guess when he met my grandmother, Josephine Brown, in Ware Neck, he moved over there. I guess was the style back in those days. I think the whole crowd lived right in the house there with my great granddaddy, and which I only got to know him till he was about 8. I was about 8. Yeah, he was about 96, I want to say.
Captain Jack.
Right. Yep. John C. Brown, J.C. Brown.
And he was Captain Jack for. What did he do? That was Marine.
I don't think he was Marine. He was like, I think back in those days you call somebody, hey, Captain, like that.
But I meant Marine like boats.
No, I don't think he was involved.
Okay, gotcha.
My granddaddy that we just spoke of was his side of the family. The Jameses were more involved in the boating. And Captain Jack, now I might be wrong about that too, but I don't think he had much of a maritime heritage.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm sure back then you couldn't help but be on the water some.
Yeah. I didn't know if he'd run in them barges.
No, I don't think so. He was a businessman, as far as I knew, and he was old school, dressed up. He wore the coat and tie every day. It was 100 degrees. It didn't matter. He chewed tobacco, smoked a pipe What else? He may have smoked cigarettes. I don't know. He was fond of tobacco, and then he hated dogs.
How about that?
I can remember him yelling at dogs like, "You know the property. You and I actually cut the grass there for many years when we were young.
Yes.
We would do it for a fried chicken lunch.
Yeah.
And we would go by boat back in those days. But yeah, I remember him coming out on that screen porch and he'd hit the door and you could hear it whack against the side, and he'd holler at them dogs. Just they might be 500 yards across that big field. He didn't want them on the property. Yeah. But anyway,
well,
Jack.
It's an interesting thing when we're talking about going from your house to your grandmother's house in boat, and then when you think about it, where your granddaddy was there, out the Mobjack Bay there, it's a relatively short shot from there to Ware Neck up the Ware River, and that's an important, and this is definitely a podcast for another day. Is the way that you talk about your grandmother from Baltimore. I'm sure she didn't come down on a boat. But from Baltimore on down to the mouth of the York River, or the mouth of the bay, I mean that was the interstate highway.
It was, and I think that's what a lot of the Jameses did. I did read into it enough to see where I think the granddaddy after my great granddaddy, I think was Jefferson James, and I believe he ran a skipjack from Mobjack up to Baltimore and hauling oysters or mail or grain or whatever they want to put on there,
It beats farming.
I guess.
Because what else are you going to do?
Well,
you're going to farm. Or,
I mean, you can have it hard one way or hard the other way.
That's right. Yeah. Or you're going to run a sawmill.
Yeah.
Or
you wear rubber boots or leather boots.
Yeah. They wanted jobs in Amazon back then.
Nah, and I think that was kind of in their blood. Seems like. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, that was at your grandmother's place down there, Ware Neck. Funny story, so you graduated out of cutting the grass, and then I came in to fill your job, and I think I came up with this saying: the testosterone levels and wisdom are inversely proportional. So a young man will sit on the nice John Deere riding lawnmower all day, and it's 90 degrees outside, getting hotter. Then go in the house and Miss Josephine has a full-on spread for lunch, a full-on spread. Eat that, then you have to go out and push and trim. And I mean that. Hey, there was many a bush, many a bush to trim around.
Boxwoods.
If I had to do it now, I'd be doing my trimming early, and I'd be kicking back on that riding lawnmower after eating that good lunch.
We didn't have good sense back then.
Heck no. So we covered that, and then your dad there, he was, from Gloucester County. Tell us a little bit about him and your mom.
All right. My dad grew up in Ware Neck, and I guess when he was probably in his early 20s, he met my mom, and I guess they started dating. She lived in, down the road in Gloucester Point. Whirlwind romance, as I understand, and then not long after, here I came. So, they they ended up finding the place where you knew me. Originally I think you and I lived right next door to each other when we were across from the Colonial Store in Gloucester Courthouse. Not long after that, they found the house down Warehouse Road, and that's where we ended up moving down there. And that's probably got as much to do with who I am as anything in the world. But yeah, so he grew up there. Let's see, he went in the Coast Guard after school. I think he had a brief stint at Randolph-Macon, a brief stint at Lewisburg, rather, in North Carolina. And I think he liked to go fast in cars and was a little bit wild. That's what he says anyway. I don't know if that era of wild would even remotely be called wild these days. But I think back then they just, I remember him telling me there was one policeman that handled all Matthews and all Gloucester. Yeah. So you could pretty much do what you wanted to. Right. But anyway, that it was the Tasty Freeze and drag racing and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But so yeah, my mom was I think when they married she was probably 19 and he was maybe 25 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And now they've been married for 52 years. So, yeah.
Well, You know, me growing up, I don't remember him not being the fire chief.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, he
know?
was for 38 years. He was the fire chief in Gloucester Volunteer Fire Department, and I spent a lot of time up there as a kid. Went on a lot of calls with him, obviously, and between working with him, even really before you were working, just riding, I guess. But riding with him, and it just spent a lot of time in the truck with him, and that's a good thing. I mean, I think that's invaluable, really. A lot of the things we do nowadays and where we live, it doesn't lend to that quite as much. But and there was always, especially around the firehouse, there were always a lot of surrogate dad figures and other characters, uncles, like that you would, you're just around a lot, and they kind of looked out for you and rubbed off on you as well. But yeah, he did that. He ran J.C. Brown Oil Company until he sold it. And that's the only place he worked his whole life. Family business. So my great granddaddy, Captain Jack, we talked of, started that in 1908. I think they were the first Texaco distributor on the East Coast. So yeah, he's got some cool old stuff from it was when it was called the Texas Company. And anyway, so yeah, I remember when I was real little, they would bring all the product by barge. And yeah, my dad has a wealth of stories on all that stuff. But the one thing I remember the most that he told me about, I don't think I ever actually saw this guy. Of course, I built myself up when I was young, toting cases. You were messing with concrete. I was toting cases of oil and rolling around 55-gallon drums of oil, and that was about the best. People want to get a workout nowadays. We used to just work. That was our workout.
Right.
But the thing Dad always told me about, there was this fella, and he said he was a big old stocky, barrel-chested dude that got off he would get off the barge with two 55-gallon drums, and the rest of them, they had this old school like a hand cart made out of wood, with like wrought iron back on it, and just it's kind of a triangle shaped thing. It was different than like a red one, a red hand truck,
Right, yeah.
And they would put one barrel in it, and the dude would roll it down the dock, and the dock was, you probably remember the dock, it wasn't like smooth as silk. It was very heavy lumber. Not all of them matched up perfectly. And this fellow would get off the boat, and he could take two 55-gallon drums, and if you tip one on its corner, that's how you move it anyway. I can do that right now.
Yeah,
you tip it over, and you move it to where you
Wheel
want, but
it,
you have to balance it.
Yeah.
Well, this dude would go down the dock in between two barrels, spinning them along, walking them with him, basically.
How about that?
He always said that dude had half a cigar in his mouth too all the time. I just had a picture in my head right now, But I don't know why that sticks out in my mind.
Right.
But yeah, Dad was always impressed by him, so I figured I was impressed as well.
Yeah.
Pretty cool stuff.
Awesome story.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, what a guy to have on the podcast. The stories. Yeah, one of the greatest things. One of the great, anybody that's done business with Jeff or has hunted with him or fished with him or whatever has probably noticed something, and I think it has a lot to do with spending a lot of time with his dad. Andy James Jr. will make you feel like you're the most important person in the world. There's no ego, and he doesn't have to tell you who he is or what he's doing or anything about him. How are you doing? How are you? How's your family? How are you? And anybody that has, been around Jeff long enough to know that's one of the things, that's why he's so easy to get along with, and that's why I think people trust him a lot. Same qualities as your dad. It's not about you.
Yeah.
You get along with people, and you're a good mediator, which we'll get into some of the work you do now, where you're kind of a middleman. You make things happen, but you have to be able to get along with people. You have to be able to set your ego aside, and you have to be, at least on the surface, you have to be patient. And that's the thing about your dad just made him just an awesome dude, and to be able to be in the truck riding around with him. And I'd love to know how many different country stores that y'all have gotten lunch in throughout the year. And it's just awesome.
I think that's my I have a penchant for just stopping at a convenience store just to get a drink.
Right.
Hey, we went to get a drink and a pack of nabs. That's what we used to do.
Right.
And yeah, like you said, from And this is stretching out there. People in the listening world might not know where Beaverlet is, but you can go from Beaverlet in Matthews to Coke in Virginia to Cappahoosic. You know, there was a little store everywhere.
On up the road.
Hundreds of them.
On up the road to Jamaica.
Well, Jamaica, all the way up there.
Susan and.
Oh man, you could go.
So
right
how do you
Cardinal,
say how do you
Foster.
say the name of the post office and the store there as you're getting down into Ware Neck before you get to where the
Right to where Rudy's was, or
Yeah.
where my grandparents lived?
no where Rudy's store
Sly.
Sly.
Yeah, that's not Rudy's store. That's Ware Neck Post Office.
Oh, Ware Neck Post
But
Office.
Sly.
Sly.
It's Schley.
L-
That is exactly where they live. Sly, Virginia.
Yeah, It
It had the post office / Cudden Edwards store.
Okay.
CUD'' Cudden Edwards. But that's what Meemaw, who I never we were going through the lineage of grandparents, Josephine James, but Meemaw was what we called her, and she had and you and I were probably beneficiaries of this, but she had a charge account at Cudden Edwards store. And it's funny, I don't know if you remember him very well, but he was a big dude. He was a Brown, Edward Brown, I believe. And he had emphysema or something because he would, he'd walk around just breathing real heavy. And we'd go in there and get a bag of Bugles and a glass bottle of Coca-Cola or something, and just put it on the tab, you know.
Right.
But that was the post office as well. It was literally 12 boxes, you know. And that's where they got their mail forever. Crazy. I mean, you could easily throw a baseball from that to their house, you know. So, Sly, Virginia.
Yeah, now that you mention, I do remember where the post office was versus the store. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you go by Rudy's and then around the beginning of the circle.
That's
and
right.
then come by the church and Sly.
Well, I tell you what. I mean, we go on that forever. But so, what year? We touched on this the other day. What year was it? After your freshman year that you came down here and started to work? So the summer of '87?
No, I don't think it was until 88 or 89.
So maybe after sophomore year or junior year.
Yeah,
But definitely not after your
I think it was
first
my
year.
junior year.
Okay.
Honestly, I think it was 89 the first year, I believe.
Did anybody come down here with you at that time? Anybody that you knew from school?
Yeah. Well, the reason I believe it's 89, I think, was because a couple of the boys that came were. I'm trying to think. I know who they were, but I think it was 89. Anyway, I was an RA in Bennett Hall at Randolph-Macon, and a couple of the boys were on my hall as freshmen.
Shout out to Bennett.
Yeah, Bennett.
Yeah.
The last one in line, buddy. Yeah, it's a good place to be. Yeah. But, a couple boys, Rob Slimp was one of them, came and lived down here briefly. He didn't stay long.
All right.
And then it was some homeboys, Gary Riley, who you know, John Olney was here.
Yeah.
Kyle Fisher, who is still here to this
That's
day.
what we were talking about the other day. Okay,
Yeah.
so now I got you.
Yep.
Okay, and so what did you find for work when you got down here? Did you have it lined up, or you just come down here and just?
Nah, we just rolled in.
Got it.
And it was another fortuitous moment, really. But we found a place to rent on West Durham Street, up the beach, kind of up towards Kmart way.
And for you folks that aren't blessed with living here, and y'all drive down 95 all morning to get here. Well, do people that live on the beach say up the beach, or is it just people in Manio and Stumpy Point and everything?
If you don't live on the beach, you say up the beach.
So when we say up the beach, it's basically
it could be anywhere within 20 miles.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Once you take a left on the causeway and you head north, that you're officially
going up the
somewhere.
beach.
So you'll find a fine place in West Durham with two dishwashers and all flat screen TVs on all the walls.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
It was old beach box
Yeah.
with about 8 linear walls. It was like a cube divided into 4. You know, I think it was 2 bedrooms, and it was about 7 of us living there. But the thing that was lucky about it, I was speaking of, was the lady we rented it from was named Marcia Brown, and real nice lady. I lived in Manio, and we didn't, we'd been down here vacation. That was all I knew of the place. Just enamored with it totally, and the fishing.
Right.
But so I started speaking with her, and she asked us. I told her we were down there from school, living for the summer. We were looking for work, and I told her I really wanted to try to get a job fishing, And she said, well, my son's a fisherman, and it's Bill Brown, who, became a friend of mine. And subsequently, I began fishing with him not that year because I went back to school, but when I finished school, very brief stint in Gloucester, and then came down here. That first winter, I commercial fished with her son Bill on a boat called the Grand Slam.
How about that?
Yeah, and so that was, and that just began the network of meeting people and kind of getting your foot in the door and stuff. One of the first jobs I did get, though, I think it was the first job, now that I mention it, was at the Jeanette's Pier with our dear friend Britton's dear wife, Audra's parents. And, so Jim and Edith Meads, they were my first employers, and worked the graveyard 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift at the pier. So, yeah, it was clean up the bathrooms, dump the trash, deal with the drunks, deal with the shark fishermen, because back then the guys were sharking at night on the end of the pier, which we did. One night they caught one, ended up weighing 763 pounds, I think, and I went in the water up to my waist trying to put a tail rope on him. It was probably about got bit, but I remember they had a gurney, like something off MASH or something, and they pulled him up on shore, put it on him, and walked him up there.
How about?
And shout out to old Jim Meads. He was great, man. Yeah. The one thing I always thought about that was, thought it was funny, was they had this set of scales there, and I don't know if they still exist, but they're the biggest scales I've ever seen, like the kind you step on that has a big round clock-looking
the
face
Toledo.
On it. Yeah. It went from 1, I swear, I think to 1,000, and so they were about that far apart. They were. It was just the whole ring around 1 to 1,000, and they laid that thing on there and got his weight. And the next day, I realized Mr. Meads had took the shark and put it around the outside and hung it up over there, so people would pay $1 to get in so they could go see it. I was laughing, man. I asked him where the shark was. They always sat at the picnic table there, he and Mrs. Mead. And just, man, wonderful people. I love them. Yeah. Just first-class people. Great opportunity.
Yeah, and for you poor souls that, didn't come back in those days. It's not the Jeanette's Pier that now, the concrete, beautiful edifice that's out there now is just a normal old pier, lots of deck.
That one was more beautiful to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just soaked with character. I mean, you couldn't, if that one stayed there 100 years, it would never be as cool as the old one. I mean, that one there is nice in its own regard. But yeah, and so I worked that night shift with a really old fella named Hap. That's all I know of his name. And he would sleep most of the night. And, I'd come in, he'd have his head straight up in the air. But
kind of like when I used to see you at the North Star. Are you doing the same thing?
He was a fixture, man. Yeah. And so I don't know, a lot didn't go on. People come in and buy beer, and occasionally have to deal with somebody out of line. But not very often. So, and another interesting fact about that was not long after that, I got a job at Oregon Inlet Fishing Center, picking up and cleaning fish. So my buddy Kyle, who you know well, Kyle Fisher, and I got jobs there, and we worked with just a host of characters. I mean, Patrick Harrison, Brant Harrison, Carter Hobbs, Clay Hauser, Mark Swain. Some of these guys, another guy, Ray, I can't think of Ray's last name, but all, great guys in their own right, all different but similar theme, and the guys, the older guys, I would say, I think, or the guys that have been there maybe a little longer, but Brant, Clay, Carter, and Mark Swain especially were the cleaners. So they had the cream of the crop job.
And you say older, you mean these are like early 20s?
Yeah.
Early 22, 23 maybe.
I would have been
24.
Maybe 20.
Yeah.
And they would have probably been, a couple of them lived here or had close ties to this place, so they were a little more connected.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure of their tenure there, but they were the cleaners.
Okay.
So they roll in at 3 o'clock and just start cleaning fish, no big deal. But Kyle and I would have to get there, and this is probably the closest thing to indentured servantry I've ever done. But it was great. I wouldn't trade it for nothing, man. But we'd roll in there, and we'd probably get there, I think, at 9 or something, and we'd have to dump all the scraps from the day before. Now, for people not listening, back in the day there, And, you know, and I was trying to get my foot in the door to become a mate.
Right.
So there's no better place to do it. And this fleet that we were, you know, dumping the scraps of is probably the best fleet I would say in the world, especially when you put them on a body of tuna or dolphin.
Right.
Anyway, so it'd be days where there would be 15,000 pounds of dolphin in there and another 8,000 pounds of tuna, or it might be just straight tuna. It was a lot to handle. And we would take the trucks and we just have to go dump them at the dump in Man's Harbor back then. That's what we did. So once we did that, we'd get back. We would have to bag probably 250-pound bags of ice. The big, you know, the kind of ice that you get in the morning when you're a mate. You back up there and throw them in the truck. So they had a big, huge machine. You would get in there, put ice bags around your feet, put boots on, get inside in a bin, you know, up to your knees in ice, and hold that bag up there until you couldn't hold no more. Then I'd hand it to Kyle. He'd pick it up, spin it, put a hog ring on it, throw it in a pile, you know, and then we'd switch back and forth. But everything we did was just, again, another workout. And then when the boats rolled in, the real workout started because every boat was throwing out, you know, a load of fish. I won't even go into numbers or anything.
Right.
Keep everybody.
Wouldn't want PETA shutting us.
Incriminate nobody.
Yeah.
But no, it was an unbelievable start, you know, around there. And I got to meet all the captains and all the mates, the guys that, you know, ended up becoming great friends later. So, yeah, wonderful place to be and some cool memories there. And that was really all I ever did. After that, I got some freelancing opportunities, you know, rode out a lot. I was very nervous to get started on my own in that, you know, just had no idea really starting.
With that being said, who's your first gig with? I know I've heard the story before, but you know, I'm trying not. I mean, I'm not trying to make this canned. I'm actually asking, you know, who's your first gig with?
My first
full-time
full-time charter gig was on the Hustler.
Gotcha.
With B.G. Smith, and more affectionately known to everyone as Smitty. And oh man, he was a character. You know, he I think he was trying to break me, you know, because he had been through a bunch of boys that had more experience. I had zero experience. I mean, I'd ridden out some and maybe freelanced once or twice, and really had no idea. And looking back now, I had no idea. But fortunately, he was not a highliner, so to speak, either. You know, he was what made it harder to fish with him was his outlook and his attitude. You know, he was and I ain't taking nothing away from him because he took me out there, put me in them, and but man, just a older character, and kind of like the epitome of a grouchy old sea captain. You know,
yeah.
That's if somebody wants to picture it. But yeah, a lot of good, funny Smitty stories over the year. He had a 54-foot pink BC boat. Buddy Kennedy built it, and that's what I started on. And I mean, I could tell a lot of stories, but the one that sticks out in my mind was the very first day I fished with him. I don't know if I ever told you this, but the first day, you know, you get on a charter boat all rigged up, thinking, you know, the best I can be anyway, ice down, just getting ready to pull out a slip, you know, and I had never, you know, later I learned after doing it for a long time that, you know, you have to get to know the people, especially as the mate. You know, you're down there with them all day. So I was so intent on getting to know the people, meeting their names and everything, and trying to get the day started off right. I totally forgot to undo the shore power cord. So there's a 50-amp power cord that goes from a dock pedestal to the cockpit of the boat, and on the back bulkhead, you know, is where it screws in. And I'm sitting there talking to him, and he puts that old 1271 in gear, and when she takes the first rumble and we start moving, I just hear something slide on the deck, and I look to my right, and that thing's go whoop, 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 like the second coil comes out of it, and I dive down there, but a monkey isn't fast enough to get that thing off there because it's like, you put it in, twist it, and then you spin this silver collar like 4 times to make her tight. Yeah. Anyway, I had my hands around it. It was in vain, man. The thing goes pow and just pulls out of the back. Wires come out of the back of her, and he throws her in reverse. And I ain't even gonna say what he said to me, but he laid it on me good, man. And that was the start to my first day. But man, yeah. So that was my first full-time gig. That was one season. He sold the boat at the end of the year, at the end of that year to Skip Feller, who lives up in Virginia Beach now and runs Rudy Whale Tours, and he's got a great business up there.
Running that boat,
bunch of head boats and stuff up there now.
Yeah.
But,
so the way it turned out really is you broke him. One season he said, "I'm selling everything."
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. It's funny though, because the him breaking me thing is always the first thing comes to me. But somewhere in the middle of the season, we became buddies. I think he was not going to break me, because at that point still, I would get sick sometimes, go out there, and because when I was young, I'd get seasick a fair amount. And I just wanted it so bad. It was no way. So I'd go out there on a really rough day, and I'd feel bad, and I'd just hang over the side and let her fly and just keep on working. And when you can work through it, finally get to the point where it doesn't bother you. I mean, I remember a night we left our dear friend Mark Crisco's house. I left his house at 2:15 to go fishing. I left his house in Gloucester to go. And that was a long day too, you know what I mean?
That's tight, getting there on time.
Got there on time, but long day, and I probably paid for it that day too. But we ended up being real good, had a good relationship, captain-mate relationship. I'd sit up there on the bridge with him. And the one thing he told my dad, though, because my dad came and fished with us one time, maybe twice. And then towards the end, my dad always tells me this. He said, Smitty got him up on the dock, put his arm around him. He said, I'll tell you one thing. If that boy stays in this business, he's a dumb son of a bitch. That was his favorite. It didn't matter who you were a dumb SOB. I mean, that was just, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But
awesome.
I got some good old memories of Smitty.
Yeah. Good golly, could we get? I mean, we could put somebody in the third chair and go. I mean, and really, when you talk about an Outer Banks experience, when we came down here, and it stayed in Nag's Head I'd start off staying at the John Yanson, and we moved it on up to the between the streets on Memorial and stayed in the beach box. I thought I was in the Taj Mahal.
Exactly.
But the one thing we always did is we went down to the fishing center. And they, we'd watch them throw the fish on the dock. The mate would spray down the dock. And that's why I tell people have dry mouth. That's why the plaque sticks to your teeth. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, you never been down to the fishing center? The mate sprays off the dock so the fish don't stick to it. I said, you gotta keep it moist.
Makes sense,
yeah. But you went down there, and I just remember the captains backing it in the hole, looking aft there, running it backwards.
Yeah.
And just thinking, that's like the great. As far as I'm concerned, they should have been running the space shuttle.
Yeah.
But it was just awesome. But to get, we could get somebody here. We could get 4 people here and have a 6-hour podcast on
It would never stop.
the culture and the people behind the building the boats, the running the boats, the repairing the boats. It could go on forever.
Yeah.
Which that actually is an awesome segue into, to tell you the truth, I really don't know exactly a whole lot about, I guess, the main way you generate income now. We talked about being the middleman between helping people instead of you getting, up in the cockpit and running a boat and being responsible for it. Now you're responsible for, a fleet of boats if people choose to do business with you. Tell me about that. Because I really, for the listeners out there, I mean, this isn't canned. I mean, we got better things to talk about than work most of the time.
Sure.
Tell me about that.
No, well, gosh, man, it's multifaceted, I guess, how I got there. But it all started, I guess the last boat I had taken some partners in. We built a Dean Johnson boat, and that would have been from 98 when I started fishing till 2012 or 13 or something like that. Finally had to let the boat go. And so I was somewhat scrambling there for a while. Not for a while because I didn't want to scramble. I was ready to do whatever. At that point, I had been managing fishing in the summer. We had kind of tailed down the chartering. I'd kind of went from fishing every day for a long time to building this new boat, fishing all the tournaments, and maybe keeping 60 or 70 days worth of mainly marlin trips. And so I'd given a lot of my tuna business away. Plus, things were slowing down a bit anyway. It wasn't like the complete heyday of the early 2000s. just I don't know what to attribute that to. It was a lot of tunas around then too, but the business was there. Anyway, when that ended, part of what I was doing was I'd fished that boat all summer and then manage a piece of property in Hyde County for the winter. And that went on for a good while, and I enjoyed it. That was, I mean, you talk about the best of both worlds as far as what I like to do. That was great because I learned a whole lot of stuff. It's funny, even back then you hear about carbon and all this environmental stuff these days. Well, you know, carbon sequestration was one of the things I learned a lot about down there, as well as, you know, timber management and a lot of different practices involving forestry and resource management. There was a few guys down there really good at gleaning money from the government through different projects and stuff. And we never got involved in a lot of that, but I learned a lot about it. I was privy to a lot of those conversations and stuff because I sat on the board at the Majestic Association for a while. It's kind of getting the cart before the horse. But throughout these years of being down there and dealing with all this kind of stuff, I got to be really good friends with a farmer down there named Wilson Daughtry. And he owns Alligator River Growers. He was the one that was famous for the Madam Mesquite sweets, which I'm pretty sure you like them.
Ate it raw.
Yeah, like an apple.
It's corn.
I love him to death, but I couldn't eat them. I ain't an onion man. But
yeah.
Anyway, he was always. I would stop and see him on the way in a lot, and then we did a lot of deer hunting, and so we bought a lot of corn there to feed the deer with. And he would just say a lot of times when I was to ask him how things are going, he'd sure like to have some good help, you know. So I never really paid much attention to it, but when all this happened, it was kind of about as close to desperation mode as I've been in a long time. Have a family now too, and a lot of bills, you know. So I rolled in there one day and I said, "Hey man, you always said you need some good help." I said, "I don't know how good I'll be, but I'm willing to go if you want to do it." And this was, I mean, the story goes, you know, deeper and more different levels to how it got to be, but ended up he hired me on, and so I drive from, you know, Manio to Hyde County. I'd be the first one there every morning and last one to leave in the evening, trying to do the best I could. And he turned me loose on some things that I had no business doing.
Like equipment?
Yeah. The first thing he put me on, the list would go on, but he sent me in a truck to Englehard from the airport down that road and told me to go get this tractor that had a box blade on it. And I was going to pull the edge off some ditches in these fields down there. Every time it's funny we're talking about this because I hadn't been to Hyde County probably literally in a couple years. And I went there the night before last. My son Brady had a basketball game down there against Madam Mesquite. So I was looking at the fields going by thinking I've worked in every one of them fields just about. Anyway, so he turned me loose going to get that tractor. And I said, well, how, you know, I don't know. I didn't know how to drive a tractor. You know, I mean, if I could get her going, I felt like I could do all right. So I went there and got on the tractor, and the dude who dropped me off was somewhat of, you know, he worked on the farm. He kind of got me straight and set up on how to operate the thing. But that was it. Right. I mean, you send your kid off on a bicycle now, and you watch them 200 yards down the road, make sure they don't tip over. And he was sending me out with it was a 20-foot wide box blade. It was literally about 6 inches wider than the road on both sides, and the tractor was it was a big ass tractor. Right, I'll say that much.
Right.
So I'm nervous as a cat, and I got to go about 2 miles through town before I get on the open stretch. So I've got to keep that thing like looking for mailboxes and stuff on the right side.
Right.
And if there are mailboxes there, I got to veer over to the left to let it overhang the ditch on that side. And then if a car comes, I got to totally pull her off. And man, I was nervous as a cat. But I finally got it back and started pulling those ditches. Really didn't have any idea what I was doing. There was piles of dirt. I had to flatten them out straight. Anyway, he turned me loose on that. He gave me about a 2-minute welding tutorial one day, then turned me loose on making a grate that was going to go in the concrete pad for a grain operation. That just you know, tip of the iceberg. But I learned a lot of stuff, and I really had a good time. I mean, it was a time. It was a being in those fields on a tractor, whether you're pulling a plow, tilling, or I was dragging dirt or a land leveler or anything like that. The only thing they never let me do was plant or harvest. So that was probably, I understand why now. But it gave me a lot of time to just think, you know, and all day long out in the country with the see the sunrise, see the sunset down there. It was a lot of time for introspection or whatever, you know, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And, you know, the good thing about fishing is, even at this age, you can always go fishing and you can get by. You know, if you can get, especially with some of the boys making the cockpits these days, if you could go fishing 2 or 3 days a week, you know, you could pay your bills. So between that and fishing on the weekends, or I think there towards the end when they were starting to harvest and most of the stuff I was doing was done, I took a couple weeks and I fished every day with the guy who bought my old boat. So just kind of pieced it together, chipped it away from there, and then not to get too long-winded, but then ended up going to work for Bayless Boat Works. This kind of leads into what we're doing. And I enjoyed working there. I worked there for a year and never really had a title. I would just get there early and try to do my best at whatever I was doing. I mean, I had a lot of tasks here and there, but I was always kind of drawn to the yard. I just had more experience in the yard. I had taken my own boats to the yard for years and years, and I liked. I don't think. Well, looking back at it later, I mean, it's obviously some beautiful new construction going on there at all times, but I don't think I was cut out for it. It's just, I think the fishing mindset of, you could call it instant gratification or whatever. You go fishing with some people, you spend a great day with them, have a good time. End of the day, you get paid. Next day, you do it again. It's I guess that kind of grows on you, becomes habit or something that you, I don't know, just a way that you kind of used to living. So that translated into the boat building industry. The yard just kind of, you know, I was drawn more there. So I spent more time down there. He had a great yard manager anyway at the time, so I wasn't really trying to take his job over. But I felt like I saw a need for, I felt like there was need for project managers too, because, you know, having the perspective of seeing it from both sides, I could see when things were lacking occasionally, and one guy couldn't do it all. So I would try to fill that void, fill the void, get them back to where it was, I always called it like it was 25 plates spinning on a stick there. And I'd see one start wobbling because I would recognize it. I could see it on the mate's face or the captain's face, or he'd be walking around like a zombie looking for somebody. So I guess through that and just the course of seeing what went on there and knowing what could be done there, I ended up, I came up with the idea because I was also, other than John, I was the only one that could run a boat there. And there was a big need a lot of times to go to Pirates Cove or somewhere else and bring a boat over for a guy that was going to get some work done. So I did that a bunch. And I said, it's kind of this little niche of people, you know, needing you to move their boats and take care of their boats and, from point A to point B, bring it back to the dock, finished product, tie her up and hook the power up, and they come down and go fishing. Everything's lovely. I had an idea, and I posed it to John several times, and he thought it was a great idea. Basically, a management side to the business, which would only benefit the yard. They complement each other well as well. So he liked the idea. I liked the idea. I just don't think it was in the cards at the time there. And so when he decided he'd had enough of me, I guess, he suggested that maybe I go and try it on my own. And I said, well, it looks like I'm gonna. So that was the birth of the genesis of this madness that I started, and I really had no idea of how to price it, of really what to offer, because it was there for you at the yard. You know, it just came. So fortunately, I knew everybody basically around the docks. Knew a lot of guys at Pirates Cove. I knew a fair amount of private boat owners through, just through having seen them on the docks, or they may have fished with me years before, or I knew their crews or something. So I kind of posed this idea to a handful of guys who I respected as boat owners, and they thought it was a good idea. But from where it started to where it's evolved to now, it was a real evolution, because it's just been a learning process the whole time. I mean, learning about that part of it more so than what we're doing, because that's a never-ending learning process. Mm-hmm. And but the key to it all, I think, is communication. 100%, because that's what I saw that was missing, in the yards. And not putting it on the yards either, because that's, when they get busy, it's almost, it's the kind of business where a really successful boatyard is the kind of business where you need, if you could have a shed full of monkeys that knew what they were doing, and you could put them in there when you didn't need them, and you could open the door and just let them run free when when the gates were getting knocked down by all these different boats, because it's just, there's ups and downs in the yard. And so trying to go in this by myself, I decided that I figured out a way to price it best I could, and then just started with a handful of boats, and then that led to a few more. And at first I was just kind of, I was getting it out there. I'd never been real big about, approaching somebody with something like that. Mm-hmm. But I had to. So I just went ahead and did it. And fortunately it worked out, the first phase of it. And then I kind of learned more about how to, what to offer, how to offer it. The whole time, it was all based on, say, for instance, you're an absentee boat owner. Mm-hmm. You live in Virginia, or you live in Maryland or something. You leave your boat at Pirates Cove. So I just basically treat it like it's my own boat. I've done that forever anyway. Mm-hmm. So I'm on it, daily now is the way it's become, at least going by checking on things daily. But as I get to know the person, kind of, that's one part of it that I learned through the evolution of it, is that it's every boat owner has different expectations, and it's all about their expectations. That and communication is it, really. So once I kind of got to know them better, built a relationship with them, I kind of knew what they wanted to, what they expected. Some guys don't care about a paint job so much, just charter boat paint job. And then the next guy wants a yacht quality finish, So you have to understand that in regards to how you're dealing with his job. So once you get to that point, and I figured that out, and I could go on and on, but now I've honed it down. I've had as many as 15 boats I'm dealing with, and over the last probably 5 or 6 years, 5 years anyway, it's kind of evolved now to more projects in the winter and the fall and the spring. The key to it all is just having a good relationship, really, with all the service providers. And I don't, there's ones that I use just like anything else, guys that I count on, I have faith in, I know they do good work. Now, there's a lot of people that I don't deal with that do great work too. And I may want to one day, but right now it's, I do what I can do, what I feel, what was it where Clint said a man's got to know his limitations? Yeah. Whatever movie that was. Yeah. I paid heed to that. Yeah. So I don't ever, get out of my lane on that kind. I can do a lot of stuff. If you run a charter boat long enough, you become semi-proficient at a lot of things. But I definitely don't go over my head and things. So I deal with great electrical guys, electronics guys, carpenters, painters, welders. You go right on down the line, but anything, curtain guys, upholsterers, canvas and curtain covers. And so, pretty much I've got to the point now where any problem that I can't figure out on my own, I can call a myriad of people to help me troubleshoot it, or I just turn it over to them, and then they handle it with the owner. I don't insert myself in the billing on that side or anything like that. We basically have a contractual agreement. I bill out for my time, as well. But anything between them is between them. I'm still there for the support of it, I'm there to make sure it gets done right, to help the guy, and I've become better at troubleshooting a lot of things over the years, a lot of things I can call the AC guy and say, hey, here's what I think the problem is. And I learned it from him, just from troubleshooting with him, picking his brain, helping him fix stuff. So that's kind of where I am now. And along the line there, I relented after years of a friend of mine who owns a yacht sales company, I guess you'd say, boat brokership in Florida, wanted me to represent him up here on this end. And I thought long and hard about it, just because I've always myself even had a little bit of a stigma about them.
Sure.
There are some unscrupulous guys in that industry. Everybody knows it. It ain't no secret. And I didn't really want to be lumped in with them. I mean, there's a lot of great guys too. Don't get me wrong. Right. And I'm not picking on that industry. But I think around here anyway, you hear more of it. But I decided, if I can do things my own way, and at my own pace, along with everything else I'm doing, because they complement each other so well, then I'd be glad to do it. And I've done that probably for the last 6 or 7 years, 6 years anyway, probably.
I didn't know you'd been doing it that long.
Yeah, I just under the radar, man.
Yeah.
Try to be. I mean, it's, I've always felt like if you just do the best you can, and let it speak for itself, or let it resonate into the fabric of the area you're working in, then maybe it'll just take care of itself. And that's what it seems like to have done. So in the midst of all that headache related, type of work, my solace or my therapy comes from my summertime trout fishing, which is kind of my therapy. I mean, it's, again, I think once you charter fish for so long, or fish any kind of way, used to being on the water, with the charter fishing, the people part was what I liked probably as much as any of it. I mean, the fishing is amazing when you first step into that arena out here. When it's as good as it gets, it's hard to describe. But after a while, after you do that so many times, then you kind of, it's like the steps of hunting progression, you want to go from killing them all to killing the limit to trophy hunting. Then you're a sportsman, or so to speak. You like watching other people do it.
Right.
And that's where I got. And to be able to take people trout fishing was just something I love to do anyway in the summertime. And I only take maybe 40 trips a year. And it's basically the same people now. It's been for a while. So they're friends. A lot of them start out as friends, but they come down. They can call me anytime, and I kind of count on them, so to speak. I don't, don't do any advertising or anything like that, and try not to get in the way of the crowd that's doing it, for 100% living. I mean, it's definitely part of my living, but it's also the part that keeps me living probably, because, I still have to juggle the rest of this stuff, but I only fish in the mornings, leave the afternoon for the boat work. And in the summertime, it slows down a lot because, the guys are down here using their boats then. So that time of year, it transcends from projects and making sure everything's floating and not freezing and blowing things out and winterizing stuff, to, okay, I fished Saturday and Sunday and everything went great. The forward AC keeps going off on high pressure. Okay, so I say to myself, I'll check the strainer, make sure it's not clogged up, and then, if it's not clogged up, and then see what happens, just start the troubleshooting from there. And if it's something I can fix, I'll fix it. If not, I'll call my man, and just get on the list. So then they come back the next weekend, and hopefully it's fixed. So it works out really well,
I tell you, I talked a little bit, about your dad and the way he related to people, and, he was a businessman, and of course he had customers that were, customers for years and years and years, but he kept them that way because of the way he treated them. And so there's a couple things, if we got young people listening to this, which I doubt we're watching it, which I doubt anybody under the age of 40 will listen to this. But, one of the things you talk about was managing expectations, understanding the man is paying your bills. What does he want? Listen, don't worry about what you want. Worry about what he wants. He's paying the bills. And communication. I don't care what you do. Yeah. It's communication. If you're working in a call center, if you're working in Food Lion, I don't care what it is. You have to communicate and understand what your people want. And if you can't, and if their expectations are something you can't meet, you have to be able to tell them that. And then the way that you treat your colleagues, these guys that you call these experts in the field, you call them and you treat them right, and you don't get in the middle and get your 10%.
Yeah.
Which your boat owners see that too. Like JJ's not taking his 10-15% out of this. You're putting them with the man, getting it done right. And so
a lot of times I'll pay them too up front. I mean,
the technicians
if it's,
and
$200 or $300, $400 or $500 sometimes, depending on how the bank account looks.
Yeah.
Solely for the reason that a great example is a friend of mine who dives on the boats. If you need a wheel change, you need something taken off your wheel, if you need to clean your bottom, scrape your running gear, whatever. He's got a X amount of time to get there and get home. And he's the guy that you need when you need him most. And not just him, but he's a great example of it. And these are all my friends too. So, I'll pay him that $200 and just get the $200 reimbursed. It's just make him happy. Right. I mean, that's the old mantra, fast pay makes fast friends. That's John Bayless taught me that. And that's true. I mean, because I've been held up. I've been stiffed aplenty. And, I try not to ever let that guide the way I think about people or anything too, but you don't ever forget it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, if somebody's worth it, pay them. I'm not a big, I don't go on Facebook a whole lot. I go on Instagram a little. Do you have any good pictures of some of those I've seen some of your trout catches and stuff like that. What's your handle? Do you do Instagram?
No.
You do Facebook mainly?
Yeah, but I hadn't put anything out there at all in 2 years.
Yeah.
Nothing. Not a single picture.
But there's some good pictures, even of like your post catch. I've seen you lay out a couple.
Well, I've got a lot of
speckled trout and everything like that. People that when I didn't used to live here, sometimes I swear I almost wish I didn't live here, so that when I got to Point Harbor, I could roll my windows down and smell the salt air. Now you're used to it. It's like sitting to that old lady in church. She's killing you with the perfume. 5 minutes later, you can't smell it. Yeah. And so, but if you want to see, some of the things, some of the just beautiful fish and beautiful pictures. So how do they find you on Facebook?
Well, I have a Facebook website, but I hadn't. It's Real Deal OBX, I think. Real Deal
with the REE, Real Deal OBX. Yeah, check it out. Yeah. But yeah, great pictures because that's just a whole nother podcast. Getting into the true Renaissance man that is Jeff James, with the photography and the writing and the art and the drawing and things like that. And I guess one day you'll get a novel published. But well, man, we covered a lot, and we really got to do this again and get somebody in here and just dig deep into the good old days. There's lots of good old days at the fishing center, but they way precede us. Yeah. But the people that come down here and for a week a year or 2 weeks a year, and man, there's stuff down here that's just awesome. The culture, and we'll have to hit on that.
Well, this place is full of characters and full of good people, full of stories and a lot of experiences. So I don't think you have any trouble finding people to talk to.
Yeah, and like Matt Walker says at Milepost, we're stuck here on purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is as good a spot as any to wrap it up. I go pick up a dancer. She's 11.
You don't want to be late for her either.
No. So we'll wind it up, and just want to thank JJ coming on for the inaugural podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. I was honored to be your first guest.
Yeah, we could have gone. I don't think my computer has enough memory to put all the stories in it. And guys, you didn't even. I feel like I shortchanged you, but and I really think a lot of people back home, that we grow up with, and people, like our parents' age people, will really get a kick out of this because it'll bring back a lot of memories for them, and and it's awesome. Days when they used to come down here some of the people back in Gloucester and Matthews in that area that are just super awesome. So thanks again, Bubba.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
We're out.
See ya.